Good morning, everyone. I a bit lost my voice. Okay, I get used to pitch in Chinese. This is my first time to pitch in English here. Okay. Today's reading from Luke 14 is a story about Jesus. He was invited to have a meal at a leader of the Pharisees' home on the Sabbath. In fact, this is the third story about Jesus dining with Pharisees in the Gospel of Luke. This story begins with a note of concern that some of the Pharisees are watching Jesus closely. However, at the end of the story, Jesus turns the table by teaching them. In verses 7 to 11, Jesus tells the Pharisees a parable. This parable is only recorded in the Gospel of Luke. In fact, I would rather say this is Jesus' rebuke instead of a parable. In the Greco-Roman period, inviting people to have meal at home implied a great social value. It often shows one's cultural status. They were unlike us. We usually have meal on a long rectangular table or a round table. They had a meal on a U-shaped table. It was much more like the setting in an office conference room. The seat for the host was in the middle of the U-shaped table, whilst other guests sat according to their social ranking and their relationship to the host. How close to the host, one said, implied how important he or she was to the host. If one was seated at the end of the table, his or her place in the social order was obvious. As a result, normally the guests like to grab a seat closer to the host. No one would like to be in the lowest ranking among the guests. Back to our real lives. Have we ever had similar experience? From my cultural background, this kind of ranking happens everywhere. It even happens in the church. In our daily lives, do we like to compare or show off our academic achievements, career achievements, companies we are working for, what kind of mobile phones we use, which suburbs we live in? In church, do we like to show how close is the relationship between us and the minister, the chairperson, or whoever? How often do we hustle for positions, which for telling titles, and one for top places, in order to signal the rest of the world that we have arrived? Why are we so inclined to believe that unless we take measures to highlight our work, signal our importance, and sit where we can be seen, the people will misunderstand how we rank in the kingdom of God? Again and again, we are told that pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. It is a common human habit to want to be observed and admired by others, and to want a higher rank. The path of pride is so tempting because many of us suffer from a desire for immediate satisfaction in terms of acknowledgement of our work and worth. Jesus consistently spoke of how the exalted will be humbled and the humble will be exalted. However, we lack enough faith to believe that we have not been forgotten by God and that our contributions to the work of God on the earth will be made known in the unfolding purpose of God. In verses 12 to 14, Jesus talks about whom should be invited to a banquet by the host. It was so weird that Jesus is forbidding a host from inviting one's family, friends, and neighbors to the meal. I think it's so normal for us to invite these people to our dinner or party. We can share common topics we talk about and talk happily with these people during the meal. So, what does Jesus mean? Let us have some background information. In the cultural circles of the elite and would-be elite in the Hellenistic world, to invite the poor and outcast would be perceived as a less waste of social capital. The elite did not associate with people they did not know, and they were above associating with those regarded as the lower beasts. Jesus indeed forbids us from inviting family, friends, and neighbors exclusively. Everyone is equal. We should not think about people as having different rankings and ignore those whom many people see as unimportant. So, how do we apply this case to our daily lives? I try to link this up with our church. It is so great that our church is a multicultural church, and that we started a multicultural worship in June. However, this is not enough. Many churches claim themselves as multicultural churches as well. So, what are the differences between these churches and us? Most of the multicultural churches consist of people from different cultural backgrounds. Sometimes, these churches have different congregations and different worship service for people with different languages. They are multicultural, but not intercultural. People with different cultural backgrounds worship at different times, so the interconnection is very little. Maybe there is only once or twice a year joint worship for some kind of celebration. People from different congregations, even they may not know each other. Do you think this scenario is similar to what Jesus talked about in verses 12 to 14? People are in the same church, but in separate circles. It is not about ranking. We just like to stay inside our comfort zone. Thankfully, our Eastwood congregation is moving forward. We are probably the pioneer to have our multicultural and multilingual worship. We are breaking down the wall between people from different backgrounds. I believe most of you can recognize the non-English speaking people in our church since June. We are moving forward, but we should not be satisfied with this change. I sincerely invite you and encourage you to step forward, to step out of your comfort zone. Try to take the initiative to talk to those non-English speaking people. I can assure you, they are all nice and friendly people as you are. Sometimes They are afraid to talk to Anglos just because of the language barrier. Don't worry about this. For the Chinese-speaking people, Reverend Tennyson and me, and even some other Chinese members, are happy to help with the translation. For the Korean-speaking people, I believe Reverend Kida is happy to help too. Later on, you can even invite them for a meal in order to get to know each other better. Let us join our hands together to move further, to step out from our comfort zones, and to make our Eastwood Church not only a multicultural church, but also an intercultural church.